For decades, you have been told that 120/80 is the gold standard for blood pressure, the perfect number that everyone must reach regardless of their age. But new research and updated guidelines suggest that for adults over 60, 70, or 80, striving for that perfect number might actually do more harm than good, leading to dizziness, falls, and unnecessary fatigue. I'm Dr. Ben Harris, and today we are going to look at the truth about what your blood pressure target should actually be as you age, and more importantly, how to get there safely without strictly relying on aggressive medication. Many people think the specific number is the most important thing to know, but that is actually not true. The order in which you do things matters more. Most people try to fix the number before they even know if the number is real, or they use the right tools in the wrong sequence. I will show you the specific safety ranges for your age group, whether you are in your 60s, 70s, or 80s, but I will save that for the end of this list. You need to understand the setup first, or those numbers will be meaningless. We are going to go through 7 essential steps to understanding and managing your pressure. Before we begin, I want to see where we are starting from. Comment your age and your usual top number range below. Is it in the 120s, 130s, 140s, or is it 150 plus? This helps us see how different everyone really is. Let's start with the first and perhaps the most critical step that is often overlooked. 1. The quiet setup protocol. This is the most common reason for a fake high blood pressure reading. It is not that your blood pressure is actually dangerously high, it is that you are measuring it during a moment of physiological noise. When you go to the doctor, or even when you measure at home, there is a tendency to rush. You might walk into the room, sit down, put the cuff on, and immediately press the button. You want to get it over with. However, your vascular system, your heart, and your blood vessels does not settle down instantly. If you have been walking, your heart rate is elevated. If you have been thinking about your to-do list, your stress hormones are slightly active. If you just ate, your blood flow is diverted to your stomach. All of these things create temporary spikes in pressure. Measuring during this noise gives you a number that is false. Let me tell you about a patient of mine named Martha. Martha is 74 years old. She is a very active woman who likes to keep her house tidy and stays busy in her garden. Martha came to see me because she was terrified. She told me that her blood pressure was out of control. She said she would check it at home, see a top number of 165 or even 170, and she would panic. This panic would make her heart race, which would make the number go even higher. She ended up in the emergency room twice because she was convinced she was having a hypertensive crisis. Both times the doctors monitored her, and her pressure eventually came down on its own. When I asked Martha to walk me through exactly how she measured her pressure at home, the problem became clear immediately. Martha would finish vacuuming the living room or carrying groceries in from the car. She would feel a little flushed or tired, and she would think, I better check my pressure. She would immediately sit at her kitchen table, wrap the cuff around her arm while she was still catching her breath, and press start. Of course it was high. Her body was working. We changed her protocol entirely. I told Martha that she was forbidden from taking her blood pressure within 30 minutes of exercise, eating, or caffeine. But more importantly, I taught her the 5-minute rule. Here is how you do it. Before you even touch the blood pressure cuff, you must sit in a chair. This chair needs to support your back. If you sit on a stool or the edge of a bed where your back is not supported, your core muscles have to engage to keep you upright. You might not feel it, but that muscle tension increases your systemic resistance, which raises your reading. So, sit with your back supported. Place both feet flat on the floor. Do not cross your legs. Crossing your legs can raise your systolic pressure, the top number, by as much as 5 to 8 points. Rest your arm on a table so that the cuff is at the same level as your heart. If your arm is dangling down, gravity will make the reading higher. If you have to hold your arm up, the muscular effort will make the reading higher. Now, here is the hard part. You must sit there in silence for 5 full minutes before you press the button. No talking, no looking at your phone, no watching the news, just sitting. When Martha started doing this, her emergency numbers of 170 dropped down to a consistent 135. She didn't need more medication, she just needed a quiet setup. This is vital because if your doctor treats the rushed number, they might give you medication you do not need, which can drop your pressure too low and cause a fall. Always verify your reading with this quiet protocol. 2. The exhale technique. Once you are sitting quietly, there is another hidden factor that spikes blood pressure for millions of seniors. It is the anxiety of the measurement itself. You might know this as white coat syndrome when you are at the doctor's office, but it happens at home too. You put the cuff on, you press the button, you hear the machine start to whir and pump up, you feel the squeeze on your arm getting tighter and tighter. Subconsciously, your brain reacts to this squeezing sensation as a threat. It anticipates a bad result. You might be thinking, what if it's high today? What if something is wrong? This worry triggers a micro-release of adrenaline. Adrenaline tells your heart to beat a little harder and your blood vessels to constrict. So, right at the moment the machine is trying to measure your resting pressure, your body is no longer resting. It is bracing for impact. This creates a false elevation that can look like persistent hypertension when it is actually just measurement anxiety. I worked with a patient named Robert, who was 68. Robert was a retired engineer, very analytical. He kept a spreadsheet of his blood pressure readings. He noticed a pattern. Every time the cuff started to tighten, he would hold his breath. He didn't realize he was doing it. He would tense up his shoulders and hold his breath, waiting for the number to appear. His readings were consistently in the 150s. I taught Robert a simple breathing technique to use specifically while the machine is working. It is a way to manually override that adrenaline response. It focuses on the exhale. When you inhale, your heart rate slightly increases. When you exhale, your heart rate slows down. By extending your exhale, you signal your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, to take over. Here's the simple change you can make. Put the cuff on your arm. Sit for your 5 minutes of quiet time. When you press the button and the machine begins to inflate, I want you to close your eyes. Take a slow, gentle breath in through your nose for a count of 4. Then, slowly blow the air out through your mouth, as if you are blowing through a straw for a count of 7 or 8. Focus entirely on that long, slow exhale. Let your shoulders drop. Let your hands relax. Keep doing this slow breathing while the machine squeezes your arm. Do not hold your breath. Do not tense up against the pressure of the cuff. Just breathe through the squeeze. When Robert started applying this technique, he was amazed. He watched his systolic number, the top number, drop by nearly 15 points in one session. He wasn't curing a disease, he was simply stopping his own nervous system from interfering with the test. This is a powerful tool because it is free, it is immediate, and it is safe. If you have chest pain, fainting, severe shortness of breath, or one-sided weakness, seek emergency care immediately. But for routine monitoring, using your breath to calm your system is one of the most effective tools you have. 3. The potassium priority. Now that we have covered how to measure accurately, we need to look at the fuel you are putting into your system. For years, the advice for blood pressure has been entirely negative. It has been about what you must remove. Stop eating salt. Cut out the flavor. Don't eat that. While reducing excessive sodium is helpful for many people, it is only half of the story. In fact, for many older adults, simply cutting salt isn't enough to fix the problem, and it makes life miserable because food tastes bland. The missing piece of the puzzle is potassium. Your kidneys use a delicate balance of sodium and potassium to regulate the fluid in your blood. Sodium holds onto water. Potassium helps flush water out. More importantly, potassium acts like a natural muscle relaxant for the walls of your arteries. Imagine your blood vessels are like rubber hoses. If the muscles in the walls of those hoses are tight and stiff, the pressure inside goes up. Potassium helps those vessel walls soften and relax. When the vessel relaxes, it widens. When it widens, pressure drops. Many seniors are not necessarily salt sensitive, but they are potassium deficient. Let me introduce you to Elaine, who is 72. Elaine was a wonderful cook in her younger years, but she had stopped cooking her favorite meals because her doctor told her to go on a low-salt diet. She was eating boiled chicken and steamed vegetables with no seasoning. She was unhappy, and surprisingly, her blood pressure was still hovering around 145/90. She was frustrated because she was making the sacrifice but not seeing the reward. We looked at her diet. While she was low on salt, she was also very low on potassium. She wasn't eating enough fruits or vegetables. We shifted her focus. Instead of obsessing over removing every grain of salt, I asked her to focus on adding potassium-rich foods to every meal. This is a much more positive way to eat. We added a banana or a cup of yogurt to her breakfast. We added a spinach salad with lunch. We included a baked potato with the skin or sweet potato with her dinner. We added avocados and white beans to her weekly rotation. Within a few weeks, Elaine's blood pressure began to drift down. It didn't happen overnight, but the trend was clear. She felt better too. Potassium is an electrolyte that helps with energy and muscle function. She had more energy to walk, which further helped her pressure. Here's how you can apply this. Look at your plate. Is there a source of potassium? Good sources include leafy greens like spinach and chard, potatoes and sweet potatoes, avocados, bananas, oranges, and yogurt. Legumes like lentils and kidney beans are also excellent. Of course, there is a safety note here. If you have advanced kidney disease, or if you are on certain medications that spare potassium, like spironolactone, you need to talk to your doctor before increasing your dietary potassium. Your kidneys need to be healthy enough to process it. But for the vast majority of older adults with normal kidney function, the goal should be to eat your medicine. Think of potassium as the natural antidote to sodium. It helps your body release the excess salt and water that drives pressure up. This approach transforms diet from a restriction to an addition. You aren't just taking things away, you are nourishing your body with what it needs to relax those blood vessels. If you are finding these tips helpful so far, please take a moment to subscribe. It helps me continue to bring this information to you. 4. The sugar vessel connection. We need to build a bridge here. This channel is dedicated to blood pressure and blood sugar because in the human body, you cannot truly separate them. Especially for adults over 60, these two issues are often best friends. They feed off each other. You might be checking your blood pressure religiously but ignoring your blood sugar because you aren't diabetic. Or maybe your sugar is just a little high and you think it doesn't affect your pressure. The truth is, high blood sugar is a direct cause of stiff arteries. Let's visualize this simply. Your blood vessels are lined with a very thin, delicate layer of cells called the endothelium. This lining is responsible for releasing nitric oxide, a gas that tells your arteries to relax and open up. When you have high blood sugar, even if it is not full-blown diabetes, but just consistently elevated glucose from a diet high in processed carbohydrates, that sugar acts like a slow-moving abrasive in your blood. It creates inflammation. It makes the blood sticky. Over time, this excess sugar damages that delicate lining. It is a process called glycation. Think of it like caramelizing sugar in a pan. It gets hard and sticky. When the vessel lining is gummed up with sugar, it cannot release that relaxing gas. The vessel becomes stiff. A stiff vessel cannot expand when your heart pumps. So, the pressure inside goes up. I saw this clearly with a patient named Sarah, aged 65. Sarah was diligent about her blood pressure medication. She took it every morning, but her pressure remained stubborn. It was always creeping up. When we looked at her labs, her blood sugar was in the pre-diabetic range. She loved her morning toast, her afternoon biscuits, and her pasta dinners. She thought, I don't have a sweet tooth, I don't eat candy. But to her body, that flour was all sugar. She was trying to lower the pressure in a system that was being constantly stiffened by sugar. We made a deal. I didn't ask her to go on a strict diet immediately. I just asked her to change the order of her food and swap out one processed carb a day. She started eating her protein and vegetables first, before touching any carbohydrates. This simple change buffers the insulin spike. She swapped her white toast for a high-fiber, seeded bread. She swapped her white rice for quinoa or cauliflower rice. By stabilizing her blood sugar, we stopped the constant inflammatory attack on her blood vessels. 3 months later, her blood pressure readings started to respond to the medication she was already taking. The medication worked better because the vessels were healthier. If you are struggling with stubborn blood pressure, you must check your blood sugar. If your fasting glucose is high, Or if your A1C is creeping up, treating that might be the key to unlocking better blood pressure control. It is all connected. You cannot treat the heart without thinking about the blood that flows through it. Another helpful step for this is understanding that fiber is your friend. Fiber slows down the absorption of sugar, which protects your vessels. Adding a tablespoon of chia seeds to your yogurt, or eating an apple with the skin on, provides the fiber sponge that soaks up sugar and cholesterol. This supports steadier readings for both your glucose meter and your blood pressure cuff. We have covered the setup, the breathing, the potassium, and the sugar connection. These are the foundational blocks. But there is a physical lever that you can pull every single day. It is something that acts almost like a medication, but it costs nothing. And surprisingly, most people do it at the wrong time of day to get the maximum benefit. When you time this activity correctly, it acts as a double-duty treatment, lowering your blood sugar and your blood pressure simultaneously. This brings us to item number 5, which involves a specific way of moving that is safe for arthritic joints and aging knees. We will continue with that and then reveal the specific blood pressure numbers, the exact ranges that are considered safe and unsafe for those in their 70s and 80s, because they are very different from what you might expect. 5. The motion snack. We ended the last section talking about the connection between blood sugar and blood pressure. This next step is the most effective physical way to manage both simultaneously. Many older adults hear the word exercise and immediately shut down. The word carries a lot of baggage. It sounds exhausting. It sounds like a gym membership. It sounds like something that will make your knees hurt or your back ache. I want you to delete the word exercise from your vocabulary for a moment. Instead, I want you to think about motion snacks. A snack is something small. It is manageable. It is not a heavy meal that sits in your stomach. When it comes to blood pressure and blood sugar, short, frequent bouts of movement are often more effective than one big, exhausting workout. Let me tell you about James. James is 80 years old. He has severe osteoarthritis in both knees and a history of lower back pain. James was what we call sedentary by necessity. He wasn't lazy, he was just in pain. Because he didn't move much, his blood circulation was sluggish. His legs would swell in the afternoons. That's edema. And his blood pressure was consistently hovering in the high 150s. His doctor kept increasing his water pills or diuretics to get rid of the fluid. But this made James dehydrated and dizzy, and his pressure didn't really improve. James and I looked at his day. He spent most of his time sitting in his recliner, especially after meals. Here is the physiological reality. When you eat a meal, your glucose spikes. Your body has to deal with that sugar. If you sit still, your pancreas has to pump out a massive amount of insulin to shove that sugar into your muscles. High insulin levels cause your body to retain sodium, which raises blood pressure. However, if you move your muscles, they have a back door for sugar. Contracting muscles can soak up glucose from the blood without needing as much insulin. We started James on the motion snack protocol. I didn't ask him to walk a mile. I asked him to walk for 10 minutes, but strictly within 30 minutes after finishing his lunch and his dinner. Because his knees hurt, he didn't even have to leave his house. He would simply walk laps around his kitchen island or down his hallway. Just 10 minutes. The change was profound. By walking after eating, he blunted the sugar spike. This meant less insulin was needed. Less insulin meant his kidneys could release more salt. But there is a second benefit. The muscles in your calves, the gastrocnemius and soleus, are often called your second heart. When you walk, those muscles contract and squeeze the veins in your legs. This pumps blood back up to your heart. It reduces the pooling in your legs. It takes the workload off your heart. After 2 months of these motion snacks, James noticed the swelling in his ankles was gone. He didn't need the high dose of water pills anymore, and because his vascular resistance dropped, his resting blood pressure settled into the 130s. He didn't run a marathon. He just timed his movement to work with his biology. Here is how to do it. Don't worry about intensity. We are not trying to get your heart rate up to a cardio zone. We are trying to activate the mechanical pumps in your legs. Finish your meal. Wait about 15 minutes for your stomach to settle. Then move for 10 to 15 minutes. If you can go outside, great. The fresh air helps. If the weather is bad or your balance is unsteady, walk inside your home. If you cannot walk, you can do seated calf raises. Sit in a chair and pump your toes up and down, flexing your calf muscles. Do this for 10 minutes while watching TV. This simple habit supports steadier readings for both glucose and pressure, and it keeps your joints lubricated. 6. The hydration factor. This next item is so simple that almost everyone ignores it, yet it is responsible for some of the most erratic blood pressure swings I see in patients over 70. It is water, but specifically, it is about understanding how your thirst mechanism changes as you age. In a younger person, the brain sends a strong signal, "I am thirsty," the moment fluid levels drop even slightly. As we age, that signal gets broken. The connection between the brain and the body's fluid sensors becomes less sensitive. By the time a senior actually feels thirsty, they are often already significantly dehydrated. Why does this matter for blood pressure? Think of your cardiovascular system like a plumbing system in a house. You have pipes, the arteries, and a pump, the heart. If the fluid in the pipes becomes low, two things happen. First, the blood becomes thicker, it becomes more viscous. Imagine trying to pump maple syrup through a hose versus pumping water. Your heart has to work much harder to push that thick blood through the tiny capillaries in your brain and kidneys. That extra force registers as high blood pressure. Second, to compensate for the low volume, your body releases hormones, like renin and angiotensin, that chemically clamp the blood vessels down. It makes the pipes narrower to maintain pressure, so you have thick blood trying to get through narrow pipes. The pressure skyrockets. Let me introduce you to David, who is 70. David came to me with a confusing problem. He had high blood pressure when he sat down, often 150/90, but when he stood up quickly, he would get dizzy and lightheaded. His doctor was afraid to treat the high number, because if they gave him more medication, his standing pressure would drop too low and he might faint. This is called orthostatic hypotension. David admitted to me that he hated drinking water. "I don't want to run to the bathroom all night," he said. So he would drink 1 cup of coffee in the morning and maybe a small glass of water at dinner. He was chronically dehydrated. His body was clamping his vessels tight just to keep blood flowing to his brain. When he stood up, gravity pulled the blood down, and because he didn't have enough fluid volume, his brain didn't get enough oxygen. Hence, the dizziness. We put David on a front-loaded hydration schedule. To avoid the nighttime bathroom trips, we concentrated his fluids in the early part of the day. He drank 1 full glass of water, about 8 to 10 ounces, immediately upon waking up. This replenishes the fluid lost during sleep. He drank another glass mid-morning and another large glass with lunch. He tapered off his fluid intake after 6 p.m. Within a week, the dizziness on standing disappeared. He had enough blood volume to handle gravity. And miraculously, his resting blood pressure came down. Why? Because his body stopped panicking. It realized, oh, we have enough fluid. It stopped producing those vessel-clamping hormones. The pipes relaxed. The blood thinned out. The pump didn't have to work so hard. Here is the simple rule. Do not wait until you are thirsty. If your mouth is dry, you are already behind. Aim for consistency. Keep a glass of water by your favorite chair. Take a few sips every time a commercial comes on TV. If plain water is boring, infuse it with a slice of lemon or cucumber, but avoid sugary drinks as we know that sugar will stiffen the vessels. This is the easiest lever you can pull. It costs nothing, but it makes every other system in your body work better. 7. The truth about targets. Now we arrive at the most important part of this discussion, the numbers. This is where there is the most confusion, the most fear, and frankly, the most bad advice given to seniors. You have likely been told that 120/80 is the perfect score. You have been told that if you are at 135 or 140, you are in the danger zone and need more medication. I am here to tell you that for adults over 60, and especially for those over 70 or 80, the rules change. The medical community is finally realizing that treating an 80-year-old like a 30-year-old is dangerous. We have to talk about something called the J curve. Imagine the letter J. On the left side, the line is high. That represents the risk of stroke and heart attack when blood pressure is too high. We know that. But on the right side of the J, the line goes up again. This represents the risk of death, falls, and organ failure when blood pressure is too low. The bottom of the J, the safest point, moves as we age. As your arteries naturally stiffen with age, which is a normal part of aging, just like gray hair, your body needs a slightly higher pressure to push blood through those stiff vessels to reach your brain and your kidneys. If we force your pressure down to 120 artificially with heavy medication, we might starve your brain of oxygen. Let me tell you about Margaret. Margaret is 82. She is a lovely woman, very sharp, but she was becoming increasingly frail. She was constantly tired. She felt foggy. She stopped driving because she didn't trust her reaction times. Her cardiologist was aggressive. He wanted her at 120/80. She was on 3 different blood pressure medications to force her numbers down. One afternoon, Margaret stood up from her sofa, blacked out, and fell. She broke her wrist. It could have been her hip. It could have been her head. When we reviewed her case, her standing blood pressure was dropping to 105/60. That is too low for an 82-year-old brain. Her fatigue wasn't old age, it was hypoperfusion. Her brain wasn't getting enough fuel. We made the decision to deprescribe. We slowly reduced her medication. We allowed her top number, systolic, to drift up to the 140s. The change was instantaneous. Her energy came back. The brain fog lifted. She felt steady on her feet. She told me, "Dr. Harris, I feel like myself again." So, what is the right number for you? This is not medical advice for your specific case. You must always consult your own doctor. But here are the general guidelines that many geriatric specialists are now using. For adults in their 60s, if you are generally healthy, fit, and have no history of stroke, we can be a bit more aggressive. A target of 130 to 135 for the top number is often excellent. 120 is okay if you can get there naturally, with diet and exercise, but we rarely use heavy medication to force it there if it causes side effects. If you have diabetes, we might aim closer to 130 to protect the kidneys, but again, safety comes first. For adults in their 70s, the target shifts. 135 to 140 is often the sweet spot. At this age, we are very concerned about balance. A slightly higher pressure ensures that when you stand up, you stay up. If you're at 138, do not panic. Do not demand more pills. That might be exactly where your body needs to be to maintain good perfusion. For adults 80 and plus, the rules are even more lenient. Many guidelines now suggest that 140 to 150 for a top number is acceptable, provided you feel good. In this age bracket, the biggest risk to your longevity is often a fall. A broken hip in your 80s is a life-changing event. Preventing a fall is often more important than preventing a slightly elevated pressure reading. Furthermore, if your diastolic, the bottom number, drops below 60 or 55, that is a red flag. The heart muscle itself gets its blood flow between beats, diastole. If that bottom number is too low, the heart can be starved of oxygen. The truth is this: the best blood pressure is the one that protects you from stroke without causing dizziness, fatigue, or falls. It is a balance. If you are chasing a number on a chart at the expense of how you feel, you are doing it backward. If you take your medication and you feel washed out, tired, or dizzy, you need to speak up. Tell your doctor, "I think my pressure might be too low for my age." Margaret is now living happily with a blood pressure of 142/75. She is gardening again. She is safe. We are not done yet. We have established the right way to measure, the importance of hydration, and the truth about your target numbers. But there is another layer to this puzzle. Many of you might be thinking, "Dr. Harris, I do the walking, I eat the potassium, but my numbers are still stubborn, specifically at certain times of the day." This is because there are hidden biological rhythms that control your blood pressure and blood sugar when you are not even awake to check them. If you ignore these, you are fighting a battle with one hand tied behind your back. Let's continue with item number 8. 8. The nighttime dip diagnostic. Most people obsess over their blood pressure during the day. They check it at noon, they check it at dinner. But physiologically, the most important blood pressure reading is the one you are usually asleep for. In a healthy body, your blood pressure should drop by about 10% to 20% while you sleep. We call this dipping. It gives your heart and your arteries a vacation. It is their time to rest and repair. However, as we age, and particularly if we have blood sugar issues, many seniors become non-dippers. Their pressure stays high all night long. This is dangerous because it means your heart is running a marathon 24 hours a day without a break. Let me tell you about Thomas. Thomas is 76. Thomas was frustrated. His daytime readings were decent, around 135/80, but he felt exhausted every morning. He would wake up with a dull headache and brain fog. His fasting blood sugar was also creeping up, even though he didn't eat late at night. He couldn't figure it out. The clue was the morning headache and the high morning sugar. These are classic signs that his body was under stress while he was sleeping. We found out that Thomas had mild sleep apnea. He was snoring and stopping breathing periodically. Every time he stopped breathing, his oxygen dropped, his adrenaline spiked, and his blood pressure shot up. Instead of dipping into rest, his body was fighting for air all night. This stress released cortisol, which dumped sugar into his blood. Thomas didn't need more blood pressure pills. He needed oxygen. He started using a simple side sleeping pillow to keep his airway open, and eventually he used a CPAP machine. The result? His morning headaches vanished. His fasting blood sugar dropped by 15 points because his cortisol was lower, and his daytime blood pressure became much easier to manage because his heart finally got its nightly vacation. Here is what you can do. You cannot easily measure your pressure while you sleep without a 24-hour monitor, but you can look for the signs. Do you wake up with a headache? Do you wake up feeling unrefreshed even after 8 hours? Do you snore loudly? Is your blood pressure significantly higher first thing in the morning compared to the evening? If you answered yes, prioritize your sleep slope. Try to stop eating 3 hours before bed. Digestion keeps your core temperature high and your metabolism active, preventing that deep rest state where pressure drops. Keep your bedroom cool. A cooler room helps lower body temperature, which signals the blood vessels to relax. If you are a heavy snorer, mention it to your doctor. Fixing your sleep is often the magic bullet for stubborn hypertension and high morning sugar. 9. The magnesium spark. We talked about potassium earlier, but potassium has a partner. They work in tandem. If potassium is the vehicle, magnesium is the key that turns the ignition. Magnesium is an essential mineral that is responsible for over 300 enzymatic reactions in your body, but for our purposes, it does two specific things. First, it is a potent vasodilator. It prevents calcium from rushing into your muscle cells and cramping them up. This includes the muscles wrapping your arteries. Second, and this is the bridge to blood sugar, magnesium improves insulin sensitivity. It helps your cells open their doors to receive sugar so it doesn't stay in your blood rotting your vessels. The problem is that modern soil is depleted of magnesium, and many seniors absorb it poorly. I want to introduce you to Linda, aged 69. Linda came to me with a dual complaint. My blood pressure is creeping up and I get terrible leg cramps at night. The leg cramps were the giveaway. Leg cramps are often a loud scream from the body saying, "I don't have enough magnesium." Linda was eating a standard diet: toast, pasta, some chicken, boiled vegetables. She wasn't eating seeds, nuts, or dark leafy greens. She was essentially magnesium starved. Her vessels were tight, high pressure, and her muscles were irritable, cramps. We changed her snack habits. Instead of a biscuit with her tea, she started having a small handful of pumpkin seeds or almonds. She started adding raw cacao powder, which is very high in magnesium, to her morning oatmeal. She also started taking a warm bath with Epsom salts, magnesium sulfate, twice a week. While the absorption through skin is debated, the relaxation effect lowered her stress hormones significantly. Within 3 weeks, the leg cramps were gone, but more importantly, her systolic blood pressure dropped by 6 points. Her body finally had the mineral it needed to relax. Here is how you can apply this. Look for magnesium-rich foods. Pumpkin seeds are the superstar here. Just 2 tablespoons give you a massive dose. Spinach, Swiss chard, black beans, and avocados are also excellent. If you have difficulty chewing nuts or seeds, you can grind them into a powder and sprinkle them over yogurt or soups. A safety note on supplements. If you decide to take a magnesium pill, be careful. Some forms, like magnesium oxide, are poorly absorbed and can cause diarrhea. Forms like magnesium glycinate are gentler. And as always, if you have kidney disease, do not take magnesium supplements without your doctor's approval, as your kidneys need to be able to clear the excess. 10. The Dawn Protocol. This is one of the most common questions I get from patients over 60. Dr. Harris, why is my blood pressure and sugar highest right when I wake up? I haven't eaten anything. I haven't done anything. This is called the dawn phenomenon for sugar and the morning surge for blood pressure. It is actually a survival mechanism. Back in ancient times, waking up was dangerous. You needed energy to hunt or run. So, about an hour before you wake up, your body releases a cocktail of hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, and glucagon. This cocktail dumps sugar into your blood for energy and clamps your blood vessels to raise pressure so you can stand up without fainting. For a senior with stiff arteries or insulin resistance, this natural surge can be too aggressive. It can push you into the danger zone right at 7 a.m. Let's look at Walter, age 71. Walter was terrified of his mornings. He would wake up, rush to the bathroom, wash his face, and immediately check his numbers. They were always high. 160/90. Fasting sugar at 130. By 10 a.m., everything was normal. But that morning spike scared him. Walter was making it worse by rushing. He was jumping out of bed. The physical activity combined with the hormonal surge was creating a double spike. We implemented the Dawn Protocol. I told Walter to slow down. When his eyes opened, he was not allowed to jump out of bed. He was to lie there for a few minutes, do some gentle stretches, and let his body wake up slowly. We also looked at his dinner. He was eating a large meal with fruit at 8 p.m. This late sugar load meant his insulin was high all night, leading to a reactive sugar dump in the morning. We moved his dinner to 6 p.m. and made it lower in carbs. Finally, we added a glass of water immediately upon waking. The morning blood is thick, dehydrated. Diluting it helps bring the pressure down. Walter's morning numbers stabilized. The surge was still there because it is natural, but it was a gentle hill, not a sharp mountain. Here is the action plan. If your numbers are high in the morning, 1. Don't rush. Move slowly for the first 20 minutes. 2. Hydrate immediately to thin the blood. 3. Check your dinner timing. Eating late fuels the morning fire. 4. Keep your morning routine calm. Do not turn on the news immediately. The news is designed to spike your adrenaline. Wait until you have had your tea. 11. The waist warning, the visceral bridge. We have talked about numbers on a machine, but there is a number on a tape measure that tells us more about your future health than almost anything else. It is your waist circumference, but specifically it is about visceral fat. This is not the pinchable fat under your skin that you might dislike visually. This is the hard fat that packs itself around your liver, your pancreas, and your kidneys. In seniors, this is critical. You can be skinny elsewhere, but if you have a hard, protruding belly, you are at high risk. This visceral fat is not just storage. It is an active organ. It pumps out inflammatory chemicals, cytokines, that directly attack your blood vessels and block your insulin. It is the physical link between high blood pressure and high blood sugar. I want to tell you about Patrick, aged 65. Patrick considered himself average. He wasn't obese, but he had what he called a beer belly, even though he didn't drink beer. His arms and legs were actually quite thin. His blood pressure was becoming resistant to medication. His doctor added a second pill, then a third. Nothing worked well. Patrick's problem was mechanical. The visceral fat was physically compressing his kidneys. When kidneys are compressed, they panic and raise blood pressure to maintain flow. We didn't focus on weight loss. We focused on waist loss. The strategy was avoiding the insulin spike. Insulin is the fat storage hormone. If insulin is high, you cannot burn belly fat. Patrick stopped snacking between meals. He ate 3 distinct meals a day. This allowed his insulin to drop in between meals, giving his body a chance to burn the visceral fat. He also reduced his fructose intake, cutting out fruit juices and sweetened sodas. Fructose is the primary driver of liver fat. In 4 months, Patrick lost only 8 pounds on the scale, but he lost 2 inches off his waist. That 2-inch reduction decompressed his kidneys and lowered inflammation. His blood pressure dropped enough that he could come off one of his medications. Here is how to check. Take a tape measure. Place it right above your hip bone, usually at the level of your belly button. Breathe out. Do not suck it in. For men, a waist above 40 inches, 102 centimeters, is the danger zone. For women, a waist above 35 inches, 88 centimeters, is the danger zone. If you are above these numbers, your blood pressure is likely being driven by this internal inflammation. Focusing on fiber, protein, and intermittent movement, like our motion snacks, will target this specific fat better than starving yourself. 12. The cold snap caution. As we round out this list, we need to talk about your environment. Many seniors notice that their blood pressure is worse in the winter, or even just in a cold room. This is simple physics. When things get cold, they shrink. This is called vasoconstriction. When cold air hits your skin, your surface blood vessels clamp shut to preserve heat for your internal organs. This drives blood away from your skin and into your core. This sudden increase in blood volume in a smaller space raises your pressure instantly. For a senior with fragile vessels, a sudden cold snap can be a trigger for a cardiac event. Let's look at a quick story about Eleanor, aged 78. Eleanor loved her morning walks, even in December. She would wear a light jacket and head out. She noticed she would get chest tightness and dizziness only during these winter walks. Her doctor did a stress test, and her heart was fine. The issue was the cold shock. Her pressure was spiking to 180/100 the moment the freezing air hit her face and neck. We changed her gear. I told Eleanor, "You must cover your neck and your nose." The neck has baroreceptors, pressure sensors. If they get cold, they panic. The nose inhales the cold air, chilling the blood going to the lungs. She started wearing a scarf wrapped high around her chin and breathing through a fabric mask or scarf for the first few minutes to warm the air. The dizziness stopped. Here is the tip. If you are going out into the cold, layer up before you step outside. Do not wait until you are shivering. Keep your home temperature stable. If you are trying to save on heating bills by keeping the house very cold, you might be paying for it with higher blood pressure. And interestingly, this applies to cold water too. If you have high blood pressure, avoid ice-cold showers or jumping into a cold swimming pool. The shock is too great. Warm or tepid water is safer for your vascular system. Remember, you do not have to do all 12 things at once. Pick one, master it, then pick another. Slow, steady progress is better than a fast failure. We have covered a lot of ground today, but remember, health is not about hitting a perfect number that was decided in a lab. It is about functionality. It is about waking up with energy, moving without fear of falling, and keeping your mind sharp. Start with one of these steps. Maybe tomorrow you just focus on the 5-minute sit before you measure. Maybe you add a banana to your breakfast. Small hinges swing big doors. If you know someone over 50 who is stressing over their numbers or feeling dizzy from their medication, please share this video with them. It might give them the confidence to have a better conversation with their doctor. And remember to subscribe for more simple, common-sense tips on blood pressure and blood sugar. I'm Dr. Ben Harris. I will see you in the next video.